And we're back with the Be Contagious Leadership Experience, and we've got a great special guest. Not only was he our fearless leader on the movie Rise, but he's also a great friend of mine that I've built a great relationship over the last year. And I'm going to show you, everybody, how great a relationship I have with him because I may butcher his last name. But that's all right. That's all right. So, ladies, please welcome Director Everything Talented Akin Otomoso. Was I close?
Man, you were good. You were good. You were good. All I'm saying is I've butchered my fair share of names. So the way I look at the world in terms of equilibrium and stuff, I'm good.
Well, it's great. Every time I go somewhere, you know, it's funny here in the United States. Every time I introduce myself, I have to say my name is Hernando. If not, they'll be like, "Is it Fernando? Is it Orlando?" And then when we were in Greece, then I became Hernando. Like, "Hello, my name is Hernando."
Well, listen, I think I've made that mistake with you as well, so we're good. And I apologize, actually.
No, it's no problem.
Because I think as I was giving you the pound, you like corrected the name. I was like, "Oh, snap."
It's all part of it, man. It's all part of it. Well, I want to thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
This is amazing. You know, I had a chance to get to know you last year when we were all, oh my gosh, with COVID shut down in Greece of all places, and everything else. But Akin, if you don't mind just sharing, giving like the elevator speech of who you are to our audience.
Thank you, man. I always say I'm that guy who's still working on his jump shot. Trying to hone the jump shot. I'm someone who loves stories and loves basketball, loves film, completely obsessed with those three things. I think storytelling, film, basketball, and so the journey of life has been trying to be immersed in those three things as much as possible. And different aspects of it, right?
Yeah. And now, how long have you been in the creative space, the film industry?
So I think I've probably been in 25 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now and then where did you get your start in the film industry?
So I studied drama. So I studied to be an actor at the University of Cape Town. And while I was at drama school, I realized very quickly that in as much as I thought acting was cool, I found my love of story developing, and that's also because my father is a writer, my sister is a writer. I grew up, my late mom, rest her soul, was an architect. So I grew up in a town called Ife in Nigeria. And I grew up at a time when some of the greatest writers were also there. Wole Soyinka, who was the first African to win the Nobel Prize for Literature, Ben Okri, you just named them. There were so many writers that came in and out of our house, and so what always the way they told the stories and the way in which they weave these tales or their plays or their films or their books. So I always grew up with that. So I went to drama school. So when I was in drama school, I realized very quickly, like, I actually have more passion for storytelling. And this is 1994 South Africa, because my father moved us all to South Africa when I was 17 in 1992 from Nigeria. So at drama school, I borrowed the drama school video VHS camera, which I didn't think I don't even know if that was allowed, but the gentleman, and rest his soul, he recently passed, a guy named Paul, because to film the drama stuff, you just had to put the camera and just film the stage, right? And then they would log all the production. So I said to him, why don't I do this, but then you let me keep the camera? And for the longest time, every time I'm back in Cape Town and I'll bump into Paul before he passed, I would always say, Paul, one, thank you for letting me have that camera. And two, I don't know if you actually allowed to let me have university property. And the first place I took that camera was the basketball court where we had practice. So I took it to my basketball practice. And basically it began this love affair with the camera and trying to understand how it tells stories. And my parents bought me a small camera. So I was able to use my classmates in my early forays in film where I knew nothing. I didn't know about lights, I didn't know about sound. You know what I mean? I was just educating myself. So it all started at drama school. And then I left drama school when I became a professional in that sense in 1997. And I've been in the industry ever since.
25 years, and fast forward, and now you are the director of the movie Rise, starring Giannis and his family, and that's just a great story in itself. I mean, talk about a little bit how that story kind of captivated you, and what was that process from almost beginning to end for you?
So the beautiful thing about directing Rise, and obviously that's where we met and working with you, and shout out to you, Amy, and your wonderful team and everything you guys did. I remember mornings looking out of my hotel room and you guys were doing the stretches. Then I threatened to come and join. Yes. Every time I said, I'll be there tomorrow. I'll be there tomorrow.
That's right.
But you guys really put in work. So shout out to you, and just loved your ethic and everything. You know, I love basketball. And so don't be surprised if basketball comes up, especially when we start even getting into some of what I know the podcast is about, which is leadership. But it's like, because of a love of basketball, which started with Michael Jordan. And so my brother and I were quite useless at soccer. Couldn't play soccer. Didn't know what was going on there. And so these friends of ours, whose father used to work for the World Bank, they would always go to the States for holiday. Mm-hmm. And when they'll come back, they would bring VHS tapes of the latest music videos, latest films, shows. And so whenever they came back, we always would go to their house to watch everything that was the latest from America. And one year they came back with Come Fly With Me, the Michael Jordan. And they put that VHS tape in, and I watched it, and I said to my brother, this is the sport we're going to play. This one, we're going to play this sport. Right. I see a path here. I can see how we could be good at this sport. Yep. And my brother is he became a much greater player than I was. But so starting with Michael Jordan and just this love affair with the NBA, I then got deeper into it, and I was like, well, okay, are there any African players in the NBA? Wow, there's Hakeem Olajuwon. Oh, amazing. He was the #1 pick. Wow. Okay, there's Dikembe Mutombo. Mm-hmm. And then I became obsessed with their stories. So I say that to say that every year the draft was out, I'm always checking for the African players, right? Because unlike now, you know, where I think you've got the G League, you got the BAL, college, the path is a little clearer to the NBA for a lot of the current African players. Whereas in the 90s and stuff, in the 80s, that's not the path. The story was always interesting, right? How they got there. So I became obsessed with their story. So when Giannis came into my consciousness, I immediately went and I read his story. I immediately went, that's an amazing story. Yeah. And if I ever have the opportunity to make a story about a basketball player, it would be this guy, because this story is amazing. This is my story. This is all ours. This is so inspiring, and so on. And this is before 2-time MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, NBA champion, you know, top 75. So I was already attracted to the story, and I just let it percolate in the back of my head. You know, I used to write a column for a site called Africa is a Country. And my Sean, who runs it, he loves football, so he has a football is a country sort of column. So I had basketball as a country, and I would record all my, whenever I was at an All-Star game, I would write about the All-Star game. I'll go to the All-Star game, right about. So I'd written about Giannis. I had an opportunity to interview Giannis, and so he had been always in my mind, you know. Mm-hmm. And fast forward 2019, I'm in Los Angeles. I buy Sports Illustrated magazine. Giannis is on the cover, and I'm just reading the magazine, because Giannis is on the cover, and there's a line there that says Disney is making a film about his life. So I was like, whoa. I said to my agent, whatever you do, you got to get me in the room so I can tell these folks, if given the opportunity, this is how I would make the film. And I kept the magazine by my bedside. Kept it by my bedside. Every morning I'll wake up, look at the magazine. Before I go to sleep, I would look at the magazine. And I said, I'm not taking this magazine away till I understand or know that they have another director. And so it took a year
Okay.
Took a year. And then my agent, I did a film called Via, which is a very successful film. New York Times critics pick, Ava DuVernay's company picked it up. I won the best director at the African Movie Academy Awards. Via was just an amazing, amazing film for my career. So they watched Via, and he said, okay, they watched Via, now they want to meet you. Here's the script. And I read the script, and I just fell in love with the Rashid script. And so I went into that meeting, and the first meeting was Charles Sombier, Bernie Goldman, and Vanessa Morrison. And so when I went into that meeting, I had nothing to lose.
Right.
I had nothing to lose. I just spoke from the heart as to how I would tell the story if I was given the opportunity to do it. And after that, it took like 7 weeks, and every week they would ask me questions, and then I would also send them stuff. I would send them music. I'd say, hey, these are the songs I'm thinking here. I did a mixtape. My manager and I, we did a mixtape. And then they would say, okay, how would you do this? And how would you do this? And how would you address that? So every week was like that. And then finally on the night that Giannis won his second MVP, I had my call with Chaz, Bernie, Vanessa, and Sean Bailey. And that's the night I got the job. And I've just been smiling ever since.
And what I love is you gave us that inside look, because, when people are watching movies like, oh, that was that director, a lot of them believe, because they don't know the film industry, just think it just falls on your lap. Like, you're just like, oh, a director, you'll direct it.
Yes,
you hustled. Like, you were making mixtapes, like you were 15 years old with the cassette trying to get it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the key thing about that is what I always try to tell my students when I have an opportunity to teach is nothing is promised. Nothing is promised, and nobody owes you anything.
Yeah.
So if you want something, you have to put yourself in position to get it. The getting it is not up to you, because somebody else may hold the cards to that stuff. But you got to put yourself in position. It's always like how I feel about basketball. If you want the ball, you got to put yourself in position to get it. You know what I mean? Call somebody to set a screen.
Right.
Go set a screen. Keep moving. You know what I mean?
Right.
No one is just going to give you the ball.
And now talk about real quickly about how that first meeting, obviously you really wanted it. And sometimes when you really want something, two things could happen. One, you get really nervous and tighten up. Or as you said, you were like, I'm just going to speak from my heart. Was there any special preparation that you did mentally before you walked into that room?
So I think that's a great question. And there's three levels to it in terms of the prep. For me, it's I take inspiration from people everyone who's like good at their job. So I'm always really obsessed with like, how did they do it? What do they do to prepare? And then obviously you find your own thing. So Jordan always had that thing of like, he always used to say he's performing every night. And I think Bill Russell said about him. Someone said about him. He was prepared to be Michael Jordan every night. So some kid that's the only time some kid will ever see. He wanted to make sure that person went home. I saw Mike. So you're talking about Jordan, elite athlete every night, bringing it every night. And he also spoke about that thing of like the joy of showing people the skills and everything I've worked hard for. So when you look at it like that, you go, I've worked hard to be a director. So actually, I take pleasure in that. You know what I mean? Like, actually, this is part of it. So there's that part of the mentality. You know what I mean? Like, this is what you've knocked on their door. Now they say, hey, come inside. You can't now come inside and be. So, you know what I mean? Like, that's not you know what I'm saying? Like, you got you've put yourself in position. So I take that from Jordan. Then what I also do is I write down. So I make sure I make my notes as to what I'm going to, how I think that, you know what I mean? Like, you make your notes and say, okay, mention this and develop my thoughts so that, and the third thing, which also comes from Muhammad Ali, which I always love, from the documentary When We Were Kings, when he talks about, when he talks about in that press conference, he's like, I've been knocked down a couple of times, my jaw's been broke. He says, I'm doing something different for this fight. I'm chopping down trees. I'm wrestling with alligators. What he's talking about is being a veteran. And so 25 years in the game, I've heard no. I've heard doors slammed in my face. I've heard you're never going to make this film. I've heard all those things. So because you've heard it, you're prepared for it. So in other words, it's good to be nervous and excited because obviously that people run over it. But I go the other way. I just go, there's two ways this thing goes. You're either getting it or you're not getting it.
Right.
If you get it, you're happy. If you don't get it, what's the lesson?
Yeah. I mean, what's the lesson, right? And that's what you're constantly learning. And I think I found most, if not all successful people, they are lifelong learners, right? That's such a cliche term, but it really is.
But it's the truth.
Yeah. What am I learning from this like right now? It may suck. It may not feel great, but what am I learning right now? Right.
Yeah.
And one of the things too, I think a lot of people don't understand is as a director, you are in charge of a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
Everyone has like their department heads.
Yeah.
Right. And I've been on concept meetings and you're the first director that had full of energy. We came on the concept meeting. No disrespect to any other directors I've worked with whatsoever. But I'm saying you would come on. I'm telling you, everybody, we'd come on this meeting. And, you know, first of all, we're in Greece, but it's during COVID. So nothing's really open. Trying to find things is just crazy. Right. But you would always come on and you would say these words, dream team number one. You would say that. And, you know, in the beginning, I think when you first said it, because I like watching everyone's reaction on Zoom and they're like, what is this guy talking about? And then as time goes on, everybody was like, yeah, this is cool. And then as time went on even further, everybody was like, yeah, we're the dream team. Like you have people leading, like, where does that come from? And when you're looking at leading a group of people, on top of that, and I know I talk way too much, but you're leading a group of people with a pretty large budget. So, and you have to be on time. So like, where does that come from? Like, how do you get there?
Well, I mean, thanks. And the dream team number one was always, you know, I think that because that's the feeling, right? I think as a person, I'm like that. You know, I just feel like for what we do, I'm just so thankful. I'm sure you know this, and you're in the game, you know what I mean? Like you, apart from your wonderful work on film, you're also in the world of basketball. You're also somebody who has nurtured young people. You're also somebody who has seen people, great potential, not make it. Somebody drop out because of circumstances. So I always have that in the back of my mind. It goes back to nothing is promised. So I'm happy to do what we do because I've seen friends of mine with the same aspiration. We start out at the same time. They drop out for whatever reason, no judgment. Or people who, you know what I mean? Like there's just so many horror stories. So every day I'm thankful and I never forget that. And I think that's the first thing. So I'm happy to be here. I hope everyone else is happy to be here, you know, and I'll bring it the 100. So, and then in terms of like, and so for me, the dream team, you know, like the dream team, let's just go back to basketball, the original dream team.
Right.
Hall of Famers, all of them, you know? And so again, you take from that. You take from this group of players who, like, you know, a lot of people picked up basketballs because of those guys. You know what I mean? And so that was always my thing. And then you come to coaching. It always goes back to basketball. So every time we start a film, it's about building the team. How do you build a team? And it's the same thing when you go to play pickup. You get to the court, you're looking at who's running the court. You're going, okay, we're going to need some offense. We're going to need some defense. What's my role in the thing? Maybe I'm not the shooter, but I'm the, you know what I mean, getting the rebounds. And so basketball has really informed a lot of my directing principles because I just feel it's the same. It's like you're building a team. And when I watch coaches, when I played, and also because I acted, I saw how directors treated actors. So there was a part of, or treated the crew. So there was always a part of me when I was in the early days when my primary business was acting. I would go, well, I see how this director is doing. I'm not gonna do that. Make a note. Don't do that. Or do that. Oh, that word. Do that. Coaches, how did they build a team? Phil Jackson. How do you coach the greatest player ever?
Right.
You know, all of these things is really about building a team, and hopefully you can build a team. And that for me is the greatest thing. And the greatest thing is when you've built the team, and it takes time. And I think consistency is important. It goes back to what Jordan was saying. He's prepared to be Jordan every night, not taking any nights off.
Right.
So when people are flaky or you don't know where they are, you know what I mean? Like, that's where in life you go like, oh, I can't trust it. Well, I can't trust her. So I take those lessons. And every time we start a project, I'm really interested in building a team. And then the idea is that the team can shine, that we all shine, that we bring out the best in each other. And so that's really the process. It's the process. And you're only as strong as the team. And so with Rise, you know, along with Bernie in the studio, we build the team, which includes yourself, which includes Mbolaji, which includes Cabello and everybody.
Right.
To just make sure that we all want to do great work and are operating at the pinnacle of our ability at the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, when you're building a team, you have to build cohesiveness, community, which I mean, you definitely did. And on top of that, I think on Rise, there was obviously different cultures coming everywhere, right? We had the locals, the Greeks were working, Americans were coming over, you know, people from all over. I think we had like transportation guys from the Czech or wherever.
There was a lot of people. Yeah.
And everybody. And one of the things, and I really didn't mean, I do mean this, like, you are an elite communicator with how just watching you on set. I don't know if our listeners can really just imagine this, but imagine you're on set 12 to 16 hours a day, maybe longer. There's all these things going on. We have to have different camera angles, and we're shooting basketball. So Ken would just, you know, we do the basketball. He would come up and say, Amy, Hernando. You'd pause. You have this dramatic pause. Okay. Then you say, what if, like, what do you think of this and this? Then you would pause again, right? You give the space for people to talk. And then you come back, and then you bring it around. I know it's such an odd question, but your communication style, working with people, and also making them feel together. I know that's part of team thing, but that is something that you either learned or you're also raised with as well too, and being an actor as well too. But how, like, when do you see yourself as an elite communicator when you're like, oh my gosh, I hope I said this, you know, with everything?
Well, I'm glad you said that, because I think a lot of it is testament to, I always give credit to my mother, rest in peace, and my dad, because the ways in which they raised my brother and my sister and I, and also my grandparents who have also passed on from the West. You know, my late mom's from Barbados, so my grandparents from Barbados. So growing up, I was able to watch my father, who was, as I said, a writer. He was the head of the department where we grew up in a, like I said, small town called Ife, but it's like a university town. And so I was able to watch my father direct actors on stage. I was able to see my mom be the head of the urban planning unit as an architect. So I was able to watch those closest and dearest to me in leadership position growing up. But I'm glad you mentioned the communication, because I remember when I started as a director, my main issue was, how do I communicate? And so many times, I'll tell you a story. Many times I remember in the beginning, I remember giving one actor a note. I didn't know him very well, but I gave him the note. But like, one of my good friends was acting in the scene opposite him. So I gave the guy the note and I went back. And later on we were talking, and my friend said to me, you know, when you gave him that note and you left, he said, I don't understand a word that guy said. So Hernando, my thing is, like, I've spent time trying to get better, get better at it, get better at it, get better at it, get better at it. So by the time you meet me 24 years later, you're not dealing with 1997, the director 1997's version. You're dealing with someone who's, you know, like as Muhammad Ali says, chopping down trees.
Yeah. And I think, again, when people watch movies, they watch film, they watch TV, there's a huge process that comes on. There's a creative process. Even like the original script is not even usually close to what the final script comes to. Yeah, I know you talked about Rise being such a great story. When you had a chance to sit and talk with Giannis and his family and the people close to him, how were they? I'm sure they were excited, and did you feel almost like not a burden, but there's a big responsibility here?
There's an amazing responsibility here, and so I always felt that. But and please, because I can also go off on a bit of a tangent, but I wanted to always say, whenever I go into meetings, I always try to tell everybody I'm the community filmmaker. I'm interested in I'm in the let the ball move. You know what I mean? The triple post offense.
Right.
Let's all share the triangle offense,
Yeah.
or the beautiful brand of basketball where you're just moving. So the communal filmmaker, because I also had to find a language to define what kind of filmmaker are you, because all filmmakers are different. And I've got director friends who their style is totally different to mine, which is all cool. So with the family, what was important to me was that they were excited. And, for those who don't know the story, Bernie Goldman, producer, and Yorgos, Bernie was shooting 300, the second one. And Yorgos, who represents Giannis, brought the story to Bernie. And Bernie was like, hey, this should be a Disney. Turns out Giannis loves Disney. And so Bernie, Giannis, and Yorgos went and pitched to Disney, and Disney agreed. So that's before any of us got, before Rash was hired. Giannis was already an exec producer, and he opened. And the thing with Giannis, again, when you're talking about not only an inspiring person, but just also his leadership style. Look at the Milwaukee Bucks and his leadership style, and also just his inclusivity of his family. So whenever we met, I was just meeting with Giannis, Thanasis, his mom, Veronica. Whenever Alex and Costas were available, they're either joining us by Zoom, we're having calls to make sure the time zone work. Just speaks to the type of person that I think that's why people love it, because they can see this is the type of person he is, all inclusive. And I really like that, because then we're all singing from the same hymn sheet. Right. And so as someone who loved that story, I was like, not only like, you need to gain trust. I want you to trust that I'm going to take care of your story. So you don't even have to tell me the responsibility. I'm fully aware of the responsibility, because I accept the responsibility. I embrace the responsibility. This is what it's about, right? So I was always aware of that, and they were so clear about the kind of story they wanted, and also they were so open. So we could call Veronica, who there's a beautiful scene in the movie when Yetide beautifully played, and shout out to the cast as well. Yetide plays Veronica, and when she's taking baby Giannis back home, and she's singing this song from called Otomoso, which is a beautiful song from my childhood. I remember hearing that song. It's when I was 6 years old. It's like my father's favorite song. It's just a beautiful song about parents and children. And Vera and I singing the song over the phone, because I was like, sure, you remember. And we start singing Otomoso. So what I'm trying to say is, like, that kind of openness allows us to be great, because there's a trust. They're not, you know what I mean? And so I took that energy and tried to sprinkle that energy around, which is the energy in ways I like to work. And so as an actor, I remember I would be on set and I just see directors shouting and shouting. I was like, yo, I'm not going to do that.
Right.
I'm not going to do that. I remember once working as an extra in a commercial when I was a student, and I was in this commercial, and we had finished at like 8 o'clock in the morning or whatever. And like, our scenes were so quick, but then because the transport, somebody forgot us, we just had to be there the whole day. And I remember thinking, and I've tried. I mean, listen, everything's trying, but I remember going, if I ever direct, I'm not going to waste people's time. Like, if you finish, you can go home.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, don't keep anybody waiting. So I say that to say, like, all these things are just observations of life, and then trying to apply them, and failure, then success, and failure and success. But each time, never stop learning and never stop trying to tweak it. It's like the game. You're always one play at a time. One play at a time.
Now, how was it, working, the two actors, Uche and Rao Agata, obviously they're brothers in real life, also first-time actors.
Yeah.
And they have a great story of themselves of, how they got there, but even beforehand. But how is that working with, two brand new actors, never acted before? They're working on their acting craft and trying to polish up their basketball skills. How was that a process for you?
It was an amazing process, and shout out to Ral and Uche just putting in the work. What I realized is that a lot of my career, I've worked with first-time actors, a lot, and so I'm comfortable with it. I understand it 100%. And the thing about it is that I think what I'm always looking for, whether you're professional or non-professional, is emotional intelligence. And if you can find someone with emotional intelligence, you can direct them. And so that's what I'm always looking for. I don't look at it like there's a technical thing you have to understand that they will figure out. Oh, don't look at the camera. You know what I mean? There's a oh, be aware that when you're here, there's some technical things that you have to understand, which again, it's about the team. How do I support you? How do we support you to make sure, again, you can shine? So building that infrastructure around actors is really key, but then more importantly, because I'm always looking for emotional intelligence, you're tapping into something that's not about, I can just recite lines. There's something deeper. And so they both have emotional intelligence, everyone in the film. So that's the key thing I'm always looking for. Are you emotionally intelligent? And by emotionally intelligent is, do you understand the difference between, you know what I mean? Like, can you empathize with this character so that we feel, so that the audience feels like, wow, yeah, that feels right,
Yeah. Now, in terms of just the excitement, working with actors, working, with producers, the Disney, et cetera, the Rise comes out, you're probably saying, well, I think like everybody like, oh, this could be a pretty good movie. Then you see the reviews. Okay. Now, I mean, is there like this hidden, like, do you do like the Tiger Woods fist bump because you're like, people love it? Or do you get like emotional? Or like, what are those feelings when you first like, oh my gosh, someone's going to review this thing?
Yeah. Well, like, the truth about it is, again, it's the same thing. You step into the arena and you say, here's my work, or here's our work that we humbly present to you. and I always say, our what we enjoy, like when you and I and the rest of the team would always talk about the moments that are ours. And the moments that are ours are the moments when you're making the film. The laughter, the time, the getting the take right, the stuff. That's what you cherish. The moment the film is finished and you present it to the world, it's now everybody's, and everyone is gonna weigh in. And I feel like I always take that kind of I understand where the joy, you know what I mean? Like, enjoy the process, which is what I'm saying. When I'm on the calls, or like, I just love it, And then the audience reception is the next phase, which is how has the audience responded to it? And it never gets old. It's always a beautiful thing when people respond. No question. And especially in this, and for Rise, because I remember saying it to Giannis and his family, and we echoed this a lot on the set. Lead with love, is that we made it with love, and so we present it with love. And I think one of the most gratifying things is to see people's response to it, and respond to the love, because they can see the love. And I think that love is evident in what you're watching, because also the spirit was great and the energy was great. You know what I mean? So you're looking for that. So I'm happy. I'm very happy. Like for me, getting the job was already slam dunk.
Right.
That was already the slam dunk. And then, but I'll tell you what, the moment when we showed Giannis and his family the film, because they saw it earlier, and I'll never forget Bernie and I walking into the theater and Giannis and his family crying and looking to us and saying, "You did it." And I think that moment, I will always cherish that moment, because, as you said, that's the responsibility. And you've given us trust.
Right.
And we've given it back. And then to then see the beautiful reviews, the beautiful audience response that continues to grow. It's amazing. It's amazing.
No, it's so, I have to tell you, I didn't see it until I saw you 2 weeks ago here in New Orleans. And it's one of those movies that, and I never really, I have to admit, of all the films I've worked on, TV shows, I usually don't watch it.
Yeah, because you're working on something else.
Yeah, I'm working on something else. But I was like, I'm going to watch this, and I'm sitting there in the theater, and like I'm watching this, and first of all, the colors on the film are so vibrant, so beautiful. All the locations, obviously, but here I am. All of a sudden, I'm crying. Now, as a basketball coach and all that other good stuff,
Yes,
I'm like,
yes.
I'm crying. But then when I talk to other people who watch it, and then I admit that I had tears, then they admit they have tears. Then all of a sudden, there's like 50, 60 people I've spoken to, like, yep, I shed tears in it. And and that is, I got a text yesterday, last night, like, oh, I saw Rise. Oh, it's a beautiful story. And I cried. I was like, yeah, I know. So did I.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, what I was saying is, but remember, when I read the script, I cried.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing. But I'll also say, to your point about feeling, I've come to Los Angeles a lot of times, and many times the city is cold, doors slam on you and so on. And to arrive in Los Angeles for the premiere and drive down the street and see this massive Rise poster, as driving to the, I really took you got to enjoy these moments, and I'm one of those. I enjoy those. I enjoy the moment because it's the moment, and and again, you got to enjoy it and also acknowledge the work of everybody to make it. You know what I mean? And just remember the work. And that's what I always. That's one of my lecturers used to tell me that thing of like, and I tell it to people all the time. It's the work. It's the work. So enjoy that work. And then when the time comes, celebrate the work. And then you move on. Yeah. But the crying, I've seen so many people say, hey, you cried. And I was like, Arash, it's a beautiful story.
Oh,
and Arash wrote a beautiful script and everybody brought the beauty to it, Dio, Yetide, Uche, Rao, Jaden, Elijah, the young ones, Chinua, and all the actors brought that love to it.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful story. And I love what you just said about the love, the leading, and enjoying. I think we work so hard that we forget to enjoy that labor.
Yeah, people need to celebrate. I'm always like, my friends always like, you always celebrate. I say, you got to celebrate.
You got to celebrate. I'm with you. We're going to celebrate all the time.
You got to celebrate because you're up at 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock, whatever it is, whatever the work is, right. You got to celebrate because you also have to acknowledge yourself and the work you've done, and also the work everyone else has done. But the acknowledgement, and then once, and you can go, maximum enjoyment.
Right. Right.
But my point is, you got to acknowledge the work and acknowledge yourself and celebrate yourself and the team all the time, and take the lessons and move, and then you go on.
No, that's freaking amazing. Well, again, I got one last question for you. I appreciate you coming on. But we asked all our guests.
Yes.
On 4 seasons of the Be Contagious Leadership Experience, here's the question: when the world wakes up and makes a full featured film based on your life, who is playing you?
I have no idea.
We should have different stages. We'll have a kid you,
20s
you, older version of you, and I mean, knowing you'd probably cast yourself in one of them, and I'm all for it.
They'll probably like keep him away from the set. No, I know you asked that question, and I thought, I was just like, I can't go. I got nothing.
No, you got nothing. That's good. Well, okay, man, I can't tell. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you.
People could find you on Instagram. I mean, your work on Rise has been it was a huge pleasure of mine and Amy's and
Likewise.
Game-Changing Films to be able to work with you. It was awesome.
I can't wait to work with you again. So that's the other thing, is in building a team. We've got the team. Can't wait to work with you all again.
Well, you got Amy's number and my number. We'll make it happen.
That's right. Thank you so much.
All right, Akin, thanks for coming on, man.
No doubt. Thank you.